Welcome to the Dr. Stacy Show, where we're talking about all things faith, love, and wellness as it relates to raising kids and parenting. I'm your host, Dr. Stacy, and today I am super excited to have with us Sandra Cox. Sandra is a published author, podcast host, and a purpose-driven encourager. She's the author of Beautiful Ashes and the voice behind the Purpose Unfiltered podcast, where she shares honest conversations about faith, healing, and finding purpose in real life. A travel surgical tech by profession, Sandra seamlessly balances excellence in her career with her roles as a wife, a mother, and a proud grandmother. A native of Johnston, South Carolina, now residing in Atlanta, Georgia, Sandra loves God, her family, and life. Her heart and her mission are to remind others that their voice matters and their story has power. Welcome to the show, Sandra.
Thank you, Dr. Stacy, for having me. I'm excited.
Me too. So I always tease people, our pre-show, like I get super excited during the pre-show, but you have this amazing gift of your story. And I know right now when we talk about storytelling, it's just a way to heal and to help people. You've done exactly that. Tell us a little bit about your book, Beautiful Ashes.
So Beautiful Ashes is different parts of my life, not my entire story, but just different parts of my life that I felt like was very important to share in the book, and just how I overcame what I went through when I went through it, my feelings, my emotions, and then showing the victorious side of my story.
Yeah, and I love how you said that, like the pain, the victorious side, right? Because we have both of those things in our life. And sometimes it's hard for people to be that vulnerable, to say, here is a book, I'm going to open up and share my story. Who encouraged you? How did you get involved in the writing process? What made you decide to say, you know what, I want to sit down and share?
Well, it was actually just me joking, Dr. Stacy, in the beginning. I was talking to a friend of mine. I said, you know what? I've been through a lot in life. I should just write
Mm,
a book. And so just joking, putting it out there or whatever. And so I ended up going to church. And one night, this person that I know, he was an associate pastor at the time. He literally stood in the pulpit. He said, Sandra, God said, you're going to write a book. And he said that it's going to heal you. And then
mm.
others are going to be healed from that. And so, yeah, that's what prompted it. And he began to give me full instructions, and I tried to write the book. And then 1 year later, here
Mhm.
comes the book, here comes the
Mm,
idea, here comes the vision for it.
mm.
So yeah, that's how I end up starting.
So all from a joke.
Yeah, right.
That someone says, "Oh, no, 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 that's not a joke. That's real stuff. We need
Real
to hear."
stuff.
I love that. And then healing, you took people on a journey through your book, right? You take
Mhm.
people through different experiences, different lessons. Give me one of the things that we were talking about pre-show is you talked about this idea of even growing up in a blended family.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about what you share in your book about that experience as a child going through that.
Well, what I talk about was having an altered beginning, altered
Mm,
reality, right? Because I grew up kind of young, still trying to figure out, I'm young, I'm a little kid, still don't really know who I am. And so growing up in a blended family, I felt like I was always trying to fit in. I didn't feel like
mm,
I had language for who I really am, characteristics. There are things about me that I had to learn growing up, getting around my other side of family, like my dad's side of family, and saying, oh, that's where I get that from. Oh, I'm a lot like them. Oh, we
mm,
act alike, we laugh alike, we look alike. You know what I'm saying? So it was definitely helping me navigate through that. And it did play a major part in identity crisis growing up or
mm.
whatnot. So just really trying to know where I fit in. It was a struggle. God knows that it was. But eventually, once I understood who I am as Sandra, the pageant
Mm.
side, the Coleman side, and put all that together, then I began to understand and love all of me.
I love the identity piece you're talking about because we blend families and we think, oh, the kids are just going to be fine, right? but even hey, wait a minute, am I like this side of the family? I'm like that side of the family. But having that sense of because I know you said it was five of y'all, right? So even the idea of saying, we blended families and then we went from littles to like everybody together.
Mhm, mhm.
How do we figure out who we are as kids? I know previous shows we've had guess who were the parents in the blended
Mhm.
family, right? So again, from the
Mhm.
parent perspective, they thought it was all going to work out. But even from
Mhm.
the child perspective, you're saying, hey, there's that identity piece that we
Mhm.
might need to talk more about. And I love that you share that. You also shared that that identity struggle continued into even your young adulthood.
Yes, ma'am. It's like for the lack of a better word, it's like lost in translation, right?
Mm,
Not
yeah.
fully understanding, not having language, but just trying to figure out, just having like blurred pictures of what life should have been. Again, trying to figure out, where do I belong? Do I belong here? Do I not belong here? Because there were a few times when there were some instances where I was made to feel intentionally that I'm not this person's child, I'm not that person's
Mhm,
child, or whatnot. And it didn't necessarily come from my parents, but it came
mhm,
from others. It was like, well, that's Randy's daughter, or that's Christine's daughter.
mhm.
And all I wanted to do is be somebody's daughter, what I'm saying?
Right.
And so that identity struggle had me lost in translation. And so growing up, it was like, who am I? You know, where do I fit in? Does anybody want me? Or do I have to always be singled out or be called the black sheep of the family? And that was something that I had to literally grow up. I grew up with, but I ended up having to break that thing, because I was like, I'm not the black sheep of nobody's family.
That's right. Ooh, ooh, listen. Ooh, somebody just snap right there.
Now.
Listen. Well, because, and you know what? It's so true. Uh, I would say our family members unintentionally will say things like, oh, that's so and so's child,
Mhm.
but not realizing, even as that child is hearing that, that you're still not saying that's my family. You're still not saying
Right.
that that kid belongs with us when you say it's so
Right.
and so's child. And so words
Mhm.
are so powerful. Wow.
Absolutely.
Um, and then we were talking, and you said, even the idea of into marriages and divorce
Mhm.
and your own experience and journey. Talk a little bit about that and what you share in the book.
Oh, wow. So entering into marriage relationships, I
Mhm,
honestly, and I have to be completely transparent with that, is I've always known that I would be a wife. I've always known
mhm,
that. But there was so much hurt, so much trauma, so much pain that I experienced, not really knowing who I am. So a lot of things that I did, because of trying to fit in, wanting to be loved, wondering if I am truly loved, I connected with things that wasn't good for me,
mhm,
for the sake of, I just want to be included, I just want to be loved, I want to feel like I'm loved. So I began to look for love in all of the wrong places, right? Which end up leading in divorces, right? And I
mhm,
had a mindset of what I wanted, what I expected. But when you don't know who you are and you trying to be something you have absolutely no language for, it is so, oh God, it
mhm.
is so not going to work out, because you're going to be combating with trying to become instead of showing up as you already are.
And I love that you said the idea that we're looking for it, right? Like, and
Hmm.
again, the idea that we try to replace and fill those gaps, and
Hmm.
we fill them though with the wrong things, and that ends
Hmm.
up causing more hurt and harm. When
Yes.
you think about parenting your own children, was there things that you thought, hey, listen, I experienced this, I'm going to do differently for my children?
Woo, yes, it was. There was so many things. I was like, I'm not raising my kids like this. They not gonna have strict rules. I'm gonna let them speak their minds. It was so many things.
Mm,
I'm gonna always make them feel like they're loved. And I do want to share,
mm,
while I'm thinking about it,
yeah.
this one part of thinking that you've done everything right, and
Mm,
you've done so much to try to shield and try to show up in a particular space, but you end up failing, not intentionally, but you
yeah.
end up failing. And one of those things was, I can remember my youngest daughter, when she must have been like a teenager or whatnot, and we were in a counseling session, and she told the counselor, she said, well, my mama don't tell me that she loves me. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
I've always tried to let you know that I love you, always try to make everybody feel that they were
Mm,
a part of the family. And but it was her interpretation, because she was
mm,
expecting something from me and I wasn't giving it to her. And I was just so dumbfounded. And that the counselor had to say, just relax, Sandra, just let her tell
yeah.
her story. This is her story,
Mm,
her perception. And so once she began to share that, after I got out my feelings and stopped being mad as a mama, because you don't want you to feel
Right.
like you're a failure. You know what I'm saying? Like, I done did all this, and this is what you say. But and so I had to really sit with that. And so I started, and then the 5 love languages came out. So I
Mm,
learned that that's
yes.
maybe how she receives love. So I had to learn
Mhm.
how to give that based on her perception.
I listen, we all been there when them teenagers listen, start telling you what you didn't do, and you try to get in your feelings, and you're like, wait a minute, let me I'm the
Yep.
mama, let me not get in my feelings. But I love that you listened, right? And not
Yes.
only that, but right, you took and said, okay, yes, I love you, but maybe it was how I needed love. And now let me show
Mm-hmm.
you because and folks, if you don't know about the 5 love languages, please look them up because they are a
Mm-hmm.
game changer when you understand how other people need to be loved and how they receive love. And you
Yes.
mentioned therapy and counseling.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about that journey because, again, not everybody's wanting and open to, but the
Mm-hmm.
idea that we do oftentimes have really great experiences in counseling. And this sounds like a great one, even with your daughter, in the sense of
Mm-hmm.
having the therapist say, hey, let's listen, let's hear her
Mm-hmm.
story, and
Mm-hmm.
bringing you two together. How was therapy used in your journey?
So therapy actually helped me to be able to see from a different perspective,
Mm,
right? Not always looking from, I'm gonna say, self-righteous,
yeah.
that I've done everything right. It
Mhm.
also, and it's without me feeling like I was a failure. So
Yeah.
therapy did allow language, a space for me to be able to acknowledge that, you know what, this is probably what happened. You know what I'm saying? It also helped me to again gain language to make some assessments in my
Mhm.
own life to actually go back and say this is where it started. This was a pattern that I became accustomed to, not realizing it, and so I now have to break that pattern because it was becoming a part of my story, and that the end
Mhm.
result was not going to be good. So therapy did help me acknowledge a lot of things. Therapy helped me to make some assessment, but therapy also helped me to realize there were some things that was not me, some things that was not, or I should not, I'll say, take responsibility for. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yes. And I love because as a therapist that often works with children, parents, when they by the time they bring their kids into therapy, they're feeling that I've been a failure or I've done something wrong. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
no, you could have done everything right, right? Textbook
Mm-hmm.
correct. But your children are still going to be your children. They're still going to have different needs and things going on. But even that ability to sit in that space with your child, right? And to
Mm-hmm.
admit, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I need to listen to you. I need to change things. Is the benefit of therapy too. And I find parents, even just calming them to say, you know what, this is a safe space for you as a parent to even
Mm-hmm.
just acknowledge your hurts and your growth
Yes.
and what you need now, trying to change that next generation and the experiences. But it's interesting because I always say those teenage mouths, boy, whoo, them kids, listen, parents, we experience it too, right?
Yes.
I always tell people, I'm the therapist. My child is still a developing teenager, young adult. Now she's in college. But listen, that
Mm-hmm.
part. And so you did the book about 5 years ago, and then you also went into podcasting as
Mm-hmm.
well. Tell us a little bit about your podcasting journey and what your podcast is all about.
Okay, well, I started this again years ago with
Mhm.
an idea. I mean my ideas, right? And so I started out doing Imagine Me,
Mm,
right? And probably over the past, I'm gonna say 6 months, I tried to relaunch it. And
mhm,
God was like, nope, that's not it. So pull it down.
mm,
So after I made this big announcement that I'm relaunching Imagine Me, now I'm having to pull it down. But I didn't understand at the time that, and what I understand now is that God was
mm,
developing a different side of me, right? And
mm,
that there was taking me from the struggle of knowing my purpose to actually walking into my purpose. And so
uh,
having to sit with all of the good, the bad, the ugly, the bumps, the tears, crying late in the middle of the night, the
mhm.
ripping apart of flesh, who I am, and
Uh,
the stripping that I was going
ooh,
through. And that's where Purpose Unfiltered came from,
mm,
because now I had to sit in the reality that this has not always been an easy journey, but the end game of this is it's a beautiful story in the making. And so I'm so super
mm.
excited about the Purpose Unfiltered journey, is letting people know, hey, yo, you're not gonna wake up and realize that this is who I am. It's going to be a continuous journey in your life at different intervals in your life of what and who you're supposed to be
Mhm.
in this earth.
And just the name change alone, right? So
Mhm,
again, thinking about imagine me to Purpose Unfiltered.
mhm, mhm.
It's just that, again, that transition of what we go through, even in telling our story. Um,
Yes.
the chapters, I always say to folks, the chapters of our lives, right? Those hard
Mhm,
chapters, God is still
mhm.
in those chapters.
Yes.
And having that opportunity to share with people, because yes, we all been there, the crying
Mhm.
nights, Lord, why are we doing this? Help me to understand. 'Cause I could imagine even in beautiful, the fact it was beautiful ashes, right? The
Ooh,
fact that there were ashes there.
mm.
Listen, some things had to be burnt, some things had to be let go, some things had to be placed in the fire, and we got to
Yes.
walk away.
Yes.
Listen, for it to be beautiful, right? For it to be
Yes.
what it is supposed to be and the purpose that God has. And that's what and I've already told you, I love your book cover. Y'all, if for no other reason, get her book for the book cover. It is beautiful.
Thank you.
It's amazing because we talk about that transformation, right? The
Oh,
idea that
yes.
beauty for ashes and just the things that we go through. And that really is symbolic of your story and the things that you want to share. And I'm just going to put this out there because I know we've talked pre-show about even the idea that you are coming up on 1 year of marriage in this marriage.
Yes.
So congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank
I tease
you.
everybody. Look, I tease you. I'm like, that's going to be me in 2026.
Come
Listen,
on.
y'all out there listening. Listen. So when you think about that part, right? The marriage, the divorce, and then
Ooh.
the idea of coming into this new relationship, what has all of the chapters leading up to this provided you for this new season?
Oh, wow. So, what led up to that was again acknowledging some toxicities that was in my life.
Mhm. Yeah.
Even in coming into this my current marriage, when we started dating, there were some things that showed up, and God was like, nope, see, that's it right there.
Mm,
That's where you've been taking the wrong road off. I walked completely in sabotage. If it looked like you about to hurt me, I'm shutting it down. But even on this journey with my current husband, Lord, he is such a blessing. I've
mm,
had to learn to literally, the Bible says that, when Jesus said, if any man become his disciple, you must follow after him, take up your cross and follow him, right? And so
mm.
I had to really sit with a lot of things, allow God to remake me over. The Bible says that we are transformed
Yeah.
by the renewing of our minds. And so now I'm saying, okay, God, I know that you created me for a purpose. I know that I'm a wife. Show me how to be what my husband needs, but show me how to show up for my family, not to walk away, not
Mm,
to let everything be crash and burn or
yeah.
whatnot, but how to live through this, how to navigate through this, how to work with my husband, how to partner with him so that we can have the marriage that we both know that God ordained us to have. And so even in that with him, I've learned a lot about myself. We'd be like, well, Lord,
Mm.
that man or that person, and God turned that thing right around and said, no, baby, you the problem. I'm
Yep.
sorry. Click, sis. You the problem. So having to sit with that caused me
Yes.
to, oh God, I walked into it with dealing with some things and having to heal. I
Mm,
mean, before I met my husband, I was on my entire healing journey,
mm,
completely healing journey. Then even while I was healing again, there are some things that showed up. God said, see, that's it right there. So I need
yeah.
you to get rid of this. If you're going to stay in this thing, you're going to have to deal with that. And so I
Mm,
began to deal with a lot of things. And I thank God for my husband because he created a space for me to be
yeah.
able to acknowledge and to still heal, even
Mm.
while we are together.
And that's a beautiful part too, to say the healing journey. People feel like I got to be completely healed before no,
Mm-hmm.
God's going to allow things that need to be healed so that you can walk into it. And then, right, that
Mm-hmm.
healing process that happens together is also part of
Yes.
it. And absolutely. And I know one thing you said before the show, we were talking, you were like, and you've learned to set some boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Talk to us about our boundary setting as we heal.
Ooh, Lord, listen, Dr. Stacy. That was hard for me. I'm gonna start with, my children or
Mm,
family or
mhm,
friends. All of them. I had to, and this is one thing God told me. He said, you've been too accessible for
mm,
everybody.
Wow.
And that's where, because I love everybody. When I love big, right?
Yeah.
If you have me, you got all of me, right? I mean, you got everything. I ain't going nowhere, you know. And what God had to show me was that I was too accessible. So that scripture that says that we can't be a city without walls, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't have any walls, and not have bad walls, but I didn't have a
Mhm.
guard to my life. The Bible says, guard your
Mhm.
heart with all
Yeah.
diligence, because out of those things flows
Flows
the
the
issues of life.
yes.
So a lot of
Mm.
my flowing was not good because I didn't have a guard around my heart. And so I had to learn to set good, healthy boundaries when it came to my kids. I had to learn. And I actually learned, to God be the glory. I actually learned from them, because they'd be like, well, I'm grown, mama. I got my own family. And boom, boom, boom. This is it. You know, this is your boundary. And
Mhm.
you as a parent don't think that you should be able to, because those are kids. We
Yeah.
carry them. You know, we're supposed to be here. But I had to learn to set good, healthy boundaries and to communicate. I'm
Mhm.
here only as much as you need me to, right? I'm no longer showing up and putting myself in situations, because that's what, and we may not understand as parents, but that's where we get hurt at, because we
Yeah.
just assume that we still have this particular place when we don't, you know. And it's not to say anything bad, our children don't love us, but when they get married and they have their own families, guess what? We're
Mhm.
not at the top of the list. We started getting down to the bottom, you know what I'm saying? And some people didn't know how to deal with that. And I had a conversation with my youngest. She said, Mama, we're growing up. We're getting
Mhm.
older. We're having our own lives. And I said, yes, you are. And I said, and you know what? And so am I. And so, and I told her, and I shared with her, I said, but I have so much peace. Oh God. When I tell you the
Mhm.
peace that I have from setting good, healthy boundaries, Dr. Stacy, not out
Yeah.
of fear, not out
Yeah.
of trauma, you know what I'm saying? Not out of
Mhm.
anger. I just learned to guard my life and have peace. If it does not serve me, it
Mm.
cannot show up in my space. So that's one thing I had to learn in all of these years. If it don't serve me and where I'm going, I don't have to receive it. I don't have to allow it in my space. So that's
Mhm.
my boundaries that I've been setting.
I love it. And listen, them grown kids, right? Listen, we still want to show up at their house, and they're like, no, no.
You got a time frame.
Yeah.
What time you going home today?
Exactly. Exactly. But and that is the hard part, right? Because we still see them as our babies. We still see them
Mm-hmm.
as our kids, and being able to set the boundaries and have them healthy. And what you said was key, not out of fear, not even out of
Mm-hmm.
obligation or expectation with boundaries, but setting boundaries that are peaceful for us and that give us healthy
Yes.
communication with our adult children, because that is so, so important. So Sandra, before we close today and thinking about all that we've talked about today, what would be your one takeaway for our listeners? What do you want them to take away from this conversation, from your book, from just your journey? What would you share with them?
I would share, knowing who you are, embrace that person. Heal. Healing will always be a part of your journey. So don't
Mhm.
put unrealistic expectations on yourself. Give yourself grace to grow,
Yeah.
grace to learn, grace to heal. You
Mm.
know who you are. You know whether it's out of, anger or whatever. Deal with all of those issues.
Yes.
Reconcile with those places, and allow God to make you into the beautiful flower that you really truly are, so you can show up in a space that may need you, healthy, on fire, on purpose.
I love that. Absolutely. And, it's the grace is that word of the day. I've done a couple recordings today, and each of our guests has talked about giving ourselves grace and giving our children
Ooh,
grace. And so I just love
yes.
that. I love that. So, Sandra, before you go, though, I have a segment of my show called The Joke of the Day, and it's my Laffy Taffy joke. I always say that Proverbs 17:22 says, a joyful heart is good medicine. So I know you're
Yes.
in the surgical tech profession. So your Laffy Taffy joke is kind of a hospital joke. Okay, you ready?
Okay. I'm ready.
Why did the cookie go to the hospital? Why did the
Why did
cookie
the
go to the hospital?
Because it didn't want to get eaten.
Close. Okay, close. Okay. He was feeling crummy.
I love it.
We gotta laugh, right? It helps our souls. So,
Yes.
Sandra, tell folks, how can they get in touch with you? How can they get your book? How can they find you on social media?
Okay, well, you can get in touch with me through my website, which is
Mhm.
thepurposedwoman.my.canva.site. You can reach me on the contact us form, and I will respond within 24 hours. Yes, 24 hours. I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook under Sandra Cox. I am on Instagram under I am Sandra17, and I am on TikTok under Mrs. Cox. My book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. It's in a paperback as well as an ebook. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I love it. Wonderful. So, folks, before we go, I love to do our Love the Babies Well send off. And so, thinking today about beauty for ashes, we all have a story. We all have things, the good, the bad, the hard part, the chapters that maybe sometimes we don't want to share. But as Sandra said, it's important that our kids are even exposed to those chapters so that they
Mm,
know and they can grow and learn from our experiences. Being on this healing journey definitely takes grace, grace for us, for ourselves, to be able to forgive ourselves, accept ourselves, but then also being able to pour into the gifts that we have been given, our children, our grandchildren, and prayerfully even our great grandchildren.
yes.
Beauty for ashes, God definitely restores all that we've been through for His grace and His glory. Thanks for tuning in to the Dr. Stacy Show. Until next time, keep the faith, love the babies, and pursue wellness.